With the release of Legacy of Destruction, we got one of the coolest anime retrain decks I think we've gotten so far. That was the Little Yugi Shining Sarcophagus deck, which was inspired by his Season 5 battle against the Pharaoh, which was kind of like the culmination of the whole thing. Dark Magician is great and all, and there is going to be a Dark Magician card for this deck added in the next set, Infinite Forbidden. But for now, we have the Little Yugi cards, and that is one of the coolest fights in the anime, so I wanted to make a deck that was not only functional, but actually good, and could stand its own in today's meta. Spoiler alert, we are not using Dogmatic of Punishment, Pot of Extravagance, or any branded cards. This is all original, with a couple of little mini engines to help get some really formidable inboards, and some really cool combos going with some cards that people thought would just make your extra deck dead. Speaking of anime, G Fuel, who sponsors this channel, is celebrating anime over on their website. They've restocked all the greatest anime flavors of all time, including my favorite, which is the Dragon Ball Z inspired Kamehameha. Not only is the strawberry lychee flavor fire, but when you mix it, it actually turns Dragon Ball orange, which is super cool. Use code Precision to save money on your order to get any of those cool anime flavors or whatever you need to restock up on. With that being said, I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day, and I don't want to keep you waiting any longer, so let's get right on into the deck profile. So let's go ahead and take a look at the cards and my theories as to why I chose what I did for this deck. Starting with the main deck, we have 3 of the Shining Sarcophagus normal summons. The Gadget Trio, this can search Shining Sarcophagus or any spell that mentions it. Also, when it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can set the Stronghold Trap from deck, but we don't play that, so that's not relevant. But you want 3 of those for sure. Those are the best normal summons in the deck. We have 2 of the Gandora, the boss monster. You don't want 1, you could play 3. But definitely, I think 2 is the sweet spot there. Really cool. You'll see some combos where we actually use this effect turn 1. Basically, he destroys everything on the field. And if he does that, he banishes them. We have some cool synergies going on with the banish pile and all of that. I'll show you here in a minute. We have 2 of the Silent Magicians. I don't think you should play more of this one. 2 is good. This is the best card to summon off of Gandora most of the time. And it is one of the cards you're going to summon off of Ties That Bind. So you could see yourself summoning this card at least twice per game. I have ways to recur it, so you could get it back and summon it again. And then we have the single copy of the Silent Swordsman Zero. I wouldn't do 2 of these cards. Really, he's only in the deck because Ties That Bind summons both. But she's way better than him. The targeting negate is nice, but the spell negate goes crazy, and you never want to draw this guy, so 1 is great. Of course, we have 3 of the Shining Sarcophagus, heart and soul of the deck. Once per turn, you can search any card that mentions Shining Sarcophagus. It's pretty busted. Also, if your opponent summons a card from the graveyard, you can discard a spell from your hand and then send that card back to the graveyard. So yeah, super cool. And then it also can't be destroyed by monster effects, so it's safe from whenever you blow up the field with Gandora. We have 3 of the Future Silence. This is the best generic searcher in the deck, other than the Shining Sarcophagus. It's a quick play spell. You can do it in the draw phase to play around draw. But if you do it in the battle phase, you and your opponent both draw cards until you have 6 in your hand. So sometimes it's really good at regaining your resources and helping with the grind game. But you want to be careful. Sometimes it's not always good to let your opponent draw to 6 either. So you want to think about it. We have 2 of the Turn Silence. If I were to make any changes to the deck, the first thing I would do is take this card to 3. This card is really good. It's hand trap protection. It's monster negate on your opponent's turn. It ends the battle phase from the graveyard, so it gets you another turn so you can blow up the field and then go back to work with your searches and all of that. This card is really good. I wouldn't mind drawing this card on my opening hand because this deck does suffer to the Droll and Lockbird pretty hard, so being able to just have an in-engine way to stop that is pretty good. So I would definitely consider taking this card to 3. And then finally, we have the Ties That Bind. You definitely don't want more than 1 of this card. Everybody's talking about the extra deck lock. This is not a bad extra deck lock. All you have to do is use this card at the end of the turn, and you can do whatever you want up until that point. So definitely you want to run this card. It's super good. It just brings out both of these cards from hand or deck. It brings up to any level 4. 2 of up to any level 4 monsters that mention Shining Sarcophagus from hand or deck. So obviously the Swordsman and Magician are what you're going to be going for most of the time. But yeah, super cool card. You can search it. So next up, we are going with my spice that we have added into this deck. We have 2 of the Aratama and 1 Sakitama. A couple of reasons for having these cards. Number 1, you only have 3 normal summons in this deck, and that's not great. You do not want to normal summon Silent Magician. You do not want to normal summon Silent Swordsman. And so bringing the normal summons up to 5 with an extender if you draw it, I thought was a really good idea. And turns out it has been a really good idea so far. Going turn 1, you can still get the Aratama and the Gadget Trio effect if you draw Shining Sarcophagus. I'll show you some combos in a minute, but basically you can normal summon Aratama, get the Sakitama, go into Infernal Flame Banshee, search your Nemesis flag, and then activate Shining Sarcophagus, search the Gandora, blow up the Infernal Banshee, banish it, get these 2 in the graveyard, and then summon the Gadget Trio off of Gandora to start the search, and then you can get your combos going and still access the ties that bind to get your full setup at the end. So this is a really cool little engine that I've included, and it works really great with the deck. It helps get the extra attributes in the graveyard for your Archnemeses Protos, because we are going to be running that. So like I said, we do have a Nemesis package. We have 1 flag, 1 corridor, and 1 Protos. This way you're able to go into Colossus or Protos, whatever is going to be better for the situation. And with Gandora and flag on the field, you can have Protos pop fire or dark. Actually, you don't even need Gandora. He can pop dark by himself. But with flag on the field, you could just pop fire, stop Snake Eyes. If you draw Corridor and either of these 2, you can actually set up Colossus and Protos, which is just dumb. So it's like just really good. And the way to, I was saying earlier, these guys, if you banish your Silent Magician or your Silent Swordsman with the Gandora effect, you can use these guys to put them back in your deck and then summon them back off of his effect at a later point, or use the ties that bind, or search them for a normal later in the game, something like that. So these actually not only help you set up the floodgates to make the control aspect of this deck work really well, but they actually help whenever you banish your own cards to put them back in the deck so you can re-access them later. Archnemeses Protos, goes without saying, this card is stupid. You can search it off flag, which you can search flag off Banshee. And then, like I said, you can set it up to where you have the fire pop and you have the dark pop, which are probably the best 2 pops right now. So there's like nothing to worry about there. If you go for the Protos line, you're probably covered. Really good cards. They're not just here because, oh, Protos win, lol. Like I said, these with the Aratama Sakitama package, I think really take this deck to the next level. They help with the recursion. They give you some bigger bodies because, let's face it, the only monsters in this deck have 0 attack, 1000 attack, and 1300 attack. Like, what are you doing with that? So you gotta have something a little bit bigger to help you with those battle phases if you don't have turn silence in your graveyard. All right, so now we're gonna take a look at the hand trap. We have a couple of Bestials here, a Magmana and a Druid's Worm. Super good cards right now. I mean, there's Light Sworn, Voiceless Voice, obviously hits the IP Masquerena for Snake Eyes, things like that. They can also banish your own monsters to give you targets for your Nemesis cards without using the Gandora effect if you draw them on turn 1. So they have good synergy with the deck as well. Magmana can obviously search Druid's Worm, but it can also search Gandora, so you can use your Shining Sarcophagus search to find something else that you might need to help with like a turn silence or something like that. They're really good with the deck. Obviously level 6 and any of your level 4s will give you a Chaos Angel, which we are running, so that is also super helpful. We have 3 Veiler, pretty standard right now. One of the best hand traps in the game. 3 Imperm, super standard right now. You should, and this probably is the best hand trap in the game. Just the fact that it doesn't activate talents and things like that. Imperm, super good. 2 Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom isn't as impactful as these 2 right now, I don't think, and I don't like giving the free Hita body as much, and also it's once per turn, so I don't want to see like 2 Ash in my hand. And you have a lot of consistency and draw power with this deck with Prosperity and Future Silence drawing to 6. So you can get a lot of non-engine in your hand if you need it. That way I think Ash is good at 2. Same reason for Nibiru. Not once per turn. It's not really good to draw late in the game. So you just want to be accessing it off your pod or something like that if you already have your engine, if you haven't already drawn it. But yeah, I mean, you could change these numbers if you want, especially because you're going to laugh at this. I run 1 talents. It's very personal. It's because anytime I run more than 1 talents, I always draw more than 1 talent, and they never are active. So I run talent so I can either fetch it off a pot or draw into it. Or whenever I do happen to draw it and it is active, it's super nice. But I just hate having this card in my hand and looking at it like, God, it can't do anything. With this deck, it actually could do something, I guess, because you could pitch it with the Shining Sarcophagus effect to send a graveyard summon back to the graveyard. But I just run 1 talents in all of my decks, so I just kept it the same for this one. And then we have the one called by, pretty standard. Like I said, this deck dies to draw. So with 2 turn silence, potentially 3 turn silence and a called by, that's 4 answers to draw. You could definitely side deck, cross out going first to stop the draw and everything like that. But I think called by is pretty good. You also don't want to get ashed too much with this deck, so pretty standard hand trap line. But there's only 17 engine cards, so you have a lot of room for non-engine. And like I said, with a lot of draw power and a lot of search power, you can access these cards pretty readily, and throwing those mini engines in to help set up some better boards, I think, was a pretty good sacrifice. And then finally, we just have, like I said, you have the 3 pots for consistency. I've seen people running extravagance with this deck. I wouldn't do that. I tested it, and it just, there's too many one-ofs, and the draw 2 is almost never as good as just picking the card you want, at least from what I've tried with. So this is the best pot card. It can run it really easily because your extra deck is pretty straightforward on the lines you're going to be going for and what cards are going to be useful or not. So you can pitch some cards from there, and then you have some banished cards that will actually raise your Gandora's attack. So Prosperity is really good for the deck, and I wouldn't run any other pot card. So that is the main deck, 40 cards. Like I said, you only have 17 Shining Sarcophagus cards, so you have a lot of room to put whatever you want in there. The Archnemeses, Sakitama, and the Nemesis engines are some really good engines that I found were great with the deck, so I would recommend trying them out. Let me know what you think in the comments of the main deck lineup. Now let's take a look at the extra deck. Of course, since we have the Corridor, we have the Colossus for our fusion. We have the Chaos Angel as our only synchro. Like I said, any Bestial and level 4 gets you that, obviously. For this XYZ, we have the Infernal Flame Banshee, which searches the Nemesis flag and gets you into those plays pretty easily. We have Bajuska. If you literally don't have anything else to do, Bajuska Pass is always a thing. Dugares, if you need the extender option, you could draw 2, which does come up and has help, because you could draw into something like a Sakitama to extend your plays to go into links or something like that, or even a Nemesis card, or just some good non-engine. And finally, we just have Typhon. Most decks should probably just be running this card. It's really good. So yeah, there's the Synchro, Fusion, and XYZ lineup for the deck. Now let's take a look at the link package. We have Salamangreat Almirage. Now, I've seen a lot of people using Artemis for this deck, which I don't think is good. It only works for your Silent Magician, which you don't want to be normal summoning. And this works for Abertama, Sakitama, and both of your silent monsters. Unfortunately, it does not work for Gadget Trio. It has 1300 attack, but if you do have to summon a Silent Magician or a Silent Swordsman, this does help to go into like an SP Little Knight for some spot removal or something like that. I think Almirage is the better link one for this deck. IP Masquerena, pretty standard. She's really good. SP Little Knight, same thing. She's really good. Cross Sheep, kind of a weird choice. But like with Protos, you don't want to just like pop a body if you go straight into Little Knight when you call Dark. And if you have Cross Sheep summon Thunder Dragon Colossus, you can actually recur like a Silent Magician or something like that if you have to use a body. And then it just comes up, and it's nice to have sometimes. You won't see yourself going into this every game, but it has its uses. Nightmare Phoenix, pretty standard. This is good to go into turn 2 if you just need to call a fire for Protos or something like that. Or just some decent removal, things like that. Pretty standard card. Nightmare Unicorn, same thing. This card's useful because I hate sending bodies from the field for the Protos summon. So if you're able to get some value by sending a card back to the deck and getting 3 different attributes in the graveyard for a Protos summon, the Unicorn comes up and it's super cool. Selene, same type of situation, but obviously you have to have Silent Magician on the field. And then she just brings Silent Magician back, so you can have her to access ties that bind or anything. Because obviously you have to have a monster that mentions Shining Sarcophagus and Shining Sarcophagus on the field to access ties that bind, so don't forget that. Appaloosa, this will, help with the Selene lines. Access code for the OTK power. Oh, and those are my tokens. But so yeah, pretty cool extra deck. Like I said, I didn't want to just add Dogmatica cards and just send them to blow things up. I thought there was a lot more potential you could do with the Shining Sarcophagus cards by adding just a couple of extra things. And this extra deck is honestly tight and good. You'll need cards when you need them, and when you don't need them, you can send them for prosperity. So, and those, like I said, will help just build your Gandorva's attack and get you cards that need. Everything works together and works great. And I've actually loved the way this deck has been performing. I haven't taken it to locals yet. Our game shop closed, so I'll be taking it this weekend. But I've been using it on online sims, and I've only lost one game so far. So it's a really, really good deck. It can pop off if it needs to. Now we're going to look at some combos. All right. So like I said, one of the best hands you could probably open with is Aratama and Shining Sarcophagus. What I would do here is just normal summon the Aratama, use its effect to get the Sakitama, activate the Sakitama, revealing it, summon it. If you have turn silence, this is where you could do some thinking. So you could, at this point, activate the Shining Sarcophagus and then put a monster on the field that mentions it for some protection. But if you don't have that, then you would just go straight into the Banshee. Then you would activate Banshee. I would send the Aratama, a couple of reasons. The biggest one being, if you have a Bestial in your hand, you would want to banish the dark so the light could stay in your graveyard for the Protos. Because you have darks readily available with Gandora and things like that. So I would always do the Aratama detach first. Same thing if you have the Gadget Trio attached to the Banshee. And yeah, you could just banish that with your Bestial. Then the Banshee effect would obviously search the flag. Then from here, you would activate the Sark. Use Sark to get yourself the Gandora. You do have to pay half your life points for this combo. I think you'll find that the M-boards are worth it. You could then activate Gandora to special himself since you have the Sark. And then use his effect to blow up the field. The Sakitama goes to the graveyard since it's material, and the Banshee gets banished, and you summon a level 4 from the deck that mentions Shining Sarcophagus. And we would go for the Gadget Trio here, and on summon we would use its effect to find yourself the Ties That Bind. Or if you draw on the Ties That Bind, you could search Turn Silence. Or if you draw on Turn Silence, you could search Future Silence. But basically, we need Ties That Bind for the combo here. At this point, you would activate Flag, shuffling back Banshee to special himself. Then you would activate Flag to search the Protos. We actually don't have the extra banish here. Protos is a little more common on turn 1. We aren't going to search the Flag here because we don't have a Bestial. If we had a Bestial, we would search Flag to do the Colossus thing. But Colossus comes up a little more in the follow-up whenever you have some more banished cards from the Gandora. So turn 1, we would actually set up Protos. It obviously helps if you know what your opponent's playing. Then from here, you have a couple of options. You have to remember to use Ties That Bind. One of these 2 cards has to remain on the field. So you can't just combo off into anything, especially if you want to be popping Fire. If you think you want to be popping Dark, that's another story. Well, let's say we're going up against the best deck in the game right now, and that is Snake Eyes. In this case, you do have to waste a body here and banish the Trio as well as the Aratama and Sakitama. But you do get Protos on the field, and you can use his effect to call Fire, and then you're protected from Snake Eyes. And you still have Gandora on the field, so you get Ties That Bind. You have a Silent Swordsman and a Silent Magician. This is a targeting negate if they target anything that mentions Shining Sarcophagus or Shining Sarcophagus. And this is just a generic spell negate if you control Shining Sarcophagus. Really cool field to put up. You obviously can't summon from the extra deck at this point, but you still have 3 cards left in your hand. All of this was just from Aratama and Shining Sarcophagus. They can't summon Fires or Dark. We obviously went for Fires here. And then they have the targeting protection and the spell negate. Hopefully you have some non-engine to help follow it up. But yeah, that's just a turn 1 setup. I don't think this has to be a going second deck. Obviously it could be. Drawing extra cards is always great, and you can break boards pretty easy with Gandora. But there's just an example on how the engines can kind of work together to set up something a little better, I think, than a Dogmatica punishment. So let's just do an actual shuffle up, and then we will draw 5 and see what happens on the draw just naturally. We'll do a going first scenario and a going second scenario. So we have Magmanite, Ties That Bind, Prosperity, and Nibiru. So honestly, a better going second hand, but we said we're going first here, so we're going first, baby. We're gonna activate Prosperity. If they ash this, well, you have some good follow-up. But let's see what we get. We always banish 6 here. So we have Imperm called by Trio, Ash, Baylor, and Magician. So we obviously would love to have the trio here. And it looks like this is going to be a pretty standard Shining Sarcophagus setup. You would just normal the trio, search the sarcophagus, activate sarcophagus, search the turn silence probably. You don't need Gandora here, but you do need to last another turn. So we'd search the turn silent. At this point, there's not a whole lot to do. You would just activate Ties the Bind, bring out your... I mean, there's one right there, but we got to go for the shiny one. Let's be real. Bring out your Silent Magician and your Silent Swordsman. You are now extra deck locked. Set one mysterious card that they have no idea what it is. And then hope that the Veiler Nibiru and Battle Phase Skip is able to get to you to your next turn. This is also a monster negate and makes your Magician beefy like instantly. Like I had a branded player try to summon a Dragoon on me to try to pop some things on the field. And my Magician was level 5 from the draw. And then also... it gained 1 level from negating a spell already, so it was level 6. And when Dragoon activated its effect, you just activate Turn Silence, target Magician. It is now level 9, puts it at 3,500 attack, which is bigger than the Dragoon. And then it also doesn't get to pop anything and gain that attack. And when they try to go to the battle phase to attack over something else, you just banish this from your graveyard, ends the battle phase, you get your follow-up, and bada bing, bada boom. So even if you only have access to these cards, this card is kind of busted. And that's why I would consider bringing it to 3. And I still don't think that's a bad idea. All right, so let's try to imagine a going second scenario. We have Gandora, Magmanite, Shining Sarcophagus, Ties the Bind, and Prosperity. Wow, that would have been a really good going first hand. That's just how Yu-Gi-Oh works, I guess, though. So let's see what happens here. Let's imagine that on the opponent's turn, we have some opportunity to summon a Magmanite. We'll obviously activate his effect. And since we already have the Gandora, we would just search the Druid's Worm in the end phase here. And drawing the combination of Gandora and Shining Sarcophagus is actually kind of busted because going second, they have basically 2 opportunities to stop a board wipe. They have to stop his... well, I guess they could stop the activation of this if they have something like a Ghost Ogre. But they would just have to stop his summon from the hand and obviously his effect to pay half and blow. So whenever we start our turn, we're going to assume they have some sort of board built, and we are going to go straight for that opportunity. We would activate the sarcophagus, not activate its effect, just in case they forget a timing or something like that. We would then activate the Gandora effect from hand to summon him since we control Shining Sarcophagus, and attack mode since it's going second. Use the Gandora effect to blow up the field and banish all the cards. Summon a level 4 from the deck. Now you have a couple of options here. You could summon the Gadget Trio and go straight for a search and continue with your combo. Or if you banish a lot of cards, you could actually summon the Magician because they gain the levels for each card that was banished. So if you banish like 9 cards, this thing comes out at level 13 already. And what is that? 5,500 attack? Like, okay. That's probably an OTK right here. Depending on the situation, if you don't banish a ton of cards, you might just want to go trio so you don't waste your normal summon because you can still get her out, obviously, with Ties the Bind. But if you do banish a lot of cards, she's really, really, really good to bring out. So we'll just say we brought her out and banished a lot of cards. Probably have game here, but if for some reason we don't, we could just... Druid's Worm, maybe they have something in their graveyard that they used on the previous turn, and that should be game. But if they don't, Prosperity. So we have a trio, an Ash, there's some non-engine, Future Silence, replenish our hand, Turn Silence. I would probably go for that, just if they try to Ash the Ties or something like that. And remember, we still haven't used Sarcophagus, so we could use that effect here to just search any card that mentions Shining Sarcophagus. Go Ties the Bind, bring out our 2 things. Bada bing, bada boom. So yeah, just as you can see, the Yugi cards themselves play really well. And they're really good at breaking fields. Going first or second, you can do a lot of setup. But we didn't draw any of the mini engines. So let's see if we can get a properly shuffled hand that has access to maybe the Aratama or a Nemesis card and see what kind of field we can make like that. All right, so we have Gadget Trio, Magmanite. How do we get him every time? Ash Blossom, Prosperity, Impermanent. So we would start off with Prosperity here just so we save some protection for the Gadget Trio and see what we access. Cool, we get access to Nemesis Flag. Perfect. Let's see what we could do with these cards. All right, so from here we would normal summon the Gadget Trio and use its effect to get the Shining Sarcophagus. Shining Sarcophagus activates. We'd use Sarcophagus effect to search the Future Silence. And what this does is it puts us at spell counter 3 for a possible Selene in the future. We would activate the Silence to search the Gandora. Gandora effect specials himself. Then we use the effect to pay half the life points, banish Trio, and then summon a level 4 from the deck And it actually gets raised 1 level because we banished 1 card. At this point, we would use Flag, shuffling back the trio, the special, and then Flag effect to search the Protos. Since we're calling Dark, we want to be careful not to waste body, and especially not Magician 0. So we would go Link 2 into Cross Sheep, and this just puts something in the graveyard for our Magma Nut. So we'd use Magma Nut, banish the Gandara, special the Mag, and then use his effect on summon, obviously. Then we would go Selene, effect of Selene to gain counters. Then she can actually summon back your Silent Magician 0. It's unfortunate she's in defense mode, but it just helps. Then we could actually go Apo here. Give yourself a nice 2-mat Appaloosa. Then we would use Protos effect, banishing the Magma Nut, Selene, probably the Flag from grave. Then you can summon your Protos. Then use Protos effect, calling Darks. Then you would set your Imperm. You have a spell negate, 2 monster negates. They can't summon Dark. You don't have the Shining Sarcophagus live because you don't have an additional spell in hand to send a summon from grave back, but you do have Ash Blossom. So there's a lot of follow-up here. And this is actually a pretty formidable board. And this just came from the little Yugi stuff. So just a look at what you can do with some additional engines and some good extra deck options that you're not just pinching to destroy cards or draw cards with like a Garuba from Punishment or something like that. These are actually plays you can make that will keep you in games and have really fun and interesting grind games that have some pretty cool battle phases and lots of interactions. So I really like this deck. It's actually becoming one of my favorite decks. Can't wait to take it to locals this weekend. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Would you play it like this, or do you like the standard Dogmatica Punishment package a little more? Let me know, guys. Don't forget we stream every single night over at twitch.tv/precision. Come talk to me about what decks you're playing, what changes you would make to this one. Is this all stupid? I don't know. Let me know. This is my first deck I've built from quote-unquote scratch. Obviously, they're engines that were slapped together, but the concept with the extra deck and the combos, those are all original to me. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe for more in the future. Good luck on your matches, and we'll see you in the next one.